The scripture this morning comes from the Gospel according to John in the 13th chapter. This is at the end of the time of Jesus' ministry. This is on the night of the Last Supper, the night on which he was betrayed and taken prisoner, but also the night when he spent a long time with his disciples, sharing the Passover meal, giving them a long set of instructions, praying for them at length. This is from the 13th chapter, the 34th and the 35th verse. I give you a new commandment, that you love one another. Just as I have loved you, you also should love one another. By this everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another. This is the word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
So, I told you all once, back before I was called to be your regular minister here, when I was just guest preaching, the story of how I became a convert. And I want to review just a little bit of the beginning of that story this morning as an example for this sermon. When I first met the Christians at my college campus, the way I met them was I followed a girl into a Bible study. No, not a Bible study, a prayer meeting. I followed a girl into a prayer meeting, not knowing what I was getting into. And it was a simple prayer meeting, because they met every night at Phil's room, whoever wanted to come, at 9:30 for prayer together. They usually lit candles and turned out the lights. Prayer would last 20 minutes to a half an hour. And after that, people would go back to study or would hang around talking or whatever. But I walked in and sat down at this prayer meeting. I was not raised in church, you know. I grew up in a household that did not go to church. So this was somewhat new to me. And what I remember most clearly of all is that at the end of the prayers, when the lights came up and the candles were put out, I remember clearly thinking to myself, okay, these are the people that I want to spend the rest of my life with. These are the people that I want to spend the rest of my life with. Now at that time I knew almost nothing of the gospel except what an American soaks up culturally from the fact that America is mostly a Christian country, and was more so back then in 1970 when this happened. No, actually it was the spring of 1971. But other than that, I didn't know much about the gospel, and when I said that to myself, I didn't mean I'm going to believe what these people believe. I didn't mean that yet. And I hung around with the Christians. I made them my friends. I spent the next month and a half with them without any intention at all of adopting Christian faith, just with the intention of making these my people, the people that I did things with. I think that this is one of the things that Jesus is talking about here, that it is in how we relate to one another that other people will most commonly first see not just who we are, but who we are because of God, who we are because of what Jesus did among us. That will be the difference and the evidence to most people of who Jesus truly is. By this you will know that people will know that you are my disciples. By this people will know that I was sent from the Father. By this people will know that salvation is in Jesus Christ, because you love one another. So this is the commandment I give you, he says, that you love one another as I have loved you. That second qualification actually makes it quite hard. As I have loved you is a self-sacrificial kind of love, and that can be difficult. Now, it's no surprise if a group of people who do things together care a lot about one another, and it may be a special case more than you normally expect if they actually seem to love one another. But this extra ingredient pushes it a little further. And also, in the church, we expect that people will see that we truly love one another in a way that extends beyond our own boundaries. We're always opening up past ourselves. This has been one of the characteristics of the Christian church from the beginning. A club, a country club, a group of people who play softball together or anything like that, they may have a lot of affection for one another. Some of them may love one another. But what we have in the church should be special, should be more than that, and should be clear to other people. And it was, for me, at that time. I saw something extra there. I'd been in groups before that had a lot of affection for one another. In high school, I spent a lot of time with the Boy Scouts and so on. But there was something special here that kept me around long enough to come to believe what they believed and to want to take part in what they had in their lives. And I saw the same thing happen to other people with that fellowship while I was in college in the years that followed. I think especially of a young man named Mark Karash. Especially because he was someone who became a particular friend of mine. And he, like me, hung around the group for months. Mark hung around with us for almost a full school year before his heart was touched and he came to faith. You see, already there's that ingredient. These are the people I want to spend my time with. These are the people I want to spend my life with. This is the first thing that outsiders see of who Jesus Christ is. Because when they first see this in us, in the church, they don't yet see Christ, or don't yet realize that they are seeing Him, don't yet understand where our love for one another comes from. And Christians have been pushing this all through the history of the church. Especially starting in the 17 and 1800s and extending through this previous century, the 20th century, Christians have gone out to other countries where hardly anyone believed in the gospel. And yes, the ultimate goal was always that people should come to faith in Jesus Christ. But as we went, we built schools, we brought doctors, we built hospitals, we taught people to read and write. Some of our people, the Wycliffe Bible translating group, went into places where there were tribes who had no written language and learned their language and then gave their language writing and then translated the Bible into their language, but also along the way, by turning their language into a written language, they helped preserve it. They preserved more than 1,000 languages that would have disappeared if they had not been there to find and understand the language and give it a written form. I have a good friend from college, one of my professors, Roger Morlang, who spent 10 years of his life in northwestern Nigeria, learning a tribal language that had never been written down by anyone, and understanding it well enough to give it a new written form, and save some of their stories and their history in their native language, and translate first the New Testament and then the Old Testament, and then later when he was a professor at college, helping with the work of revising the whole translation of the Bible into their language. But if we had simply walked in, learned their language and translated the Bible into it, and just started preaching from the Bible, would they have seen, would they have known, would they have understood that we were who we were because of Jesus Christ? Was it not the love that they saw that we shared with one another, and that was so strong when we shared it with one another that we reached out to share it with them as well? This is work that Christians have done for 300 years now. And it dovetails with, it fits in with, it goes with the sermon I gave last week. That it should be one of our major hobbies. That each of us, as we take care of our own lives, our own work, and our own family, should also have, as one of our major hobbies, working with and through the church so that there will be no poverty among us. This was the command God gave to the Israelites in the book of Deuteronomy as they were about to enter into Israel. There shall be no poverty among you. You shall treat your fellows in such a way, being open-handed and generous with them, that everyone has a chance to make a decent living. We've been doing that in the church with the people to whom we go to share the good news of the gospel for hundreds of years now, and we need to keep doing it. And we, all of us here, need to make that part of what we do in the church. We don't just hang around here. We don't just have a little circle and share our lives and say prayers together. We should be reaching out beyond ourselves, which also means we need to enrich our own life with one another. That's why we're having this event this afternoon, to enrich our shared life together, so that we have together with one another here in this church, a church that speaks 3 languages, so that we share a love for one another that will be astounding to the people who come and visit us. And that has been part of what this congregation has been about since the beginning. How many Christians in this congregation started attending church here just in order to find Taiwanese fellowship, not Christian fellowship yet? They weren't necessarily Christians at all, nor even necessarily intended to become Christians, at least not when they started. What they wanted was to share a Taiwanese culture. They came from Taiwan, here was a place to share it. And then in the course of time, as they saw the love we had for one another, and heard the gospel preached, they were moved to become Christians. Joan, how many people like that are part of this congregation?
At least about 40%.
40% of the whole congregation came here not at first for the gospel, but to share the love that we have for one another. This is how the world on the outside begins to know and see and understand who Jesus Christ is. It's not just a fellowship for us. It's not just a shared church life for us. We're not just another social gathering. We are the evidence that God changes lives. We are the evidence that God has sacrificed himself for us. We are the evidence of the resurrection, the evidence of Jesus Christ. That's also what we're working on this afternoon. It's not always easy to love one another that way, and it's not always easy to be self-sacrificing about it. And it's especially not easy when we're a group that speaks 3 languages. And not all of us speak one another's language very well at all. Some of our Taiwanese speakers don't understand Mandarin very well. Many of our Mandarin speakers don't understand Taiwanese very well. All of us understand English some, but especially for some of the older people, English is clumsy and difficult. Most of us English speakers hardly understand any Taiwanese or Mandarin at all, don't we? I got a little German, but I got no Mandarin or Taiwanese. The work we go to, not to split up and seek a congregation of speakers of our language. That's the most common thing. That's the most ordinary thing. People split up into language groups. This is the trouble people from India sometimes have here in America in finding churches. They split up according to language groups. How easy would it be here for us to split up according to language groups? For our Mandarin speakers to go find a Mandarin-speaking church. There are a half dozen of them or more here in New Jersey. How easy would it be for our second generation to just join regular, ordinary English-speaking congregations? of the Presbyterian Taiwanese congregations in our denomination, about 2/3 of them have done it that way. The second generation just joins regular churches because they grew up speaking English. It is a witness we give to the gospel of Jesus Christ, and a witness we give to the resurrection of Jesus Christ, that we gather and refuse to let 3 languages be a dividing thing among us. We are here to love one another. Not just to fellowship together, not just to play together, not just to go bowling, not just to sing together, but to love one another and to meet one another's needs and to help one another get what they need from the church, so that the church can also be the place that gives to the world at large, outside these walls, what they need as well, so that when they come in to share our life together, even if they do not at first have any idea of what the gospel means, even if they do not at first believe in God more than just vaguely, by what they see among us, they will learn and know who Jesus Christ is. Amen.